Hi, my name is Monica Kritchmer, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Universal Women's Network, Woman of Inspiration Awards, and this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast, where we speak with women who are leading, inspiring, and motivating. These are women who pave the road less traveled and inspire others to dream big. So today with me is a special guest. She is a 100 Woman of Inspiration book contributor, also one of our 2020 Woman of Inspiration Award recipients. It is a pleasure to have you with us today, Monique. Monique Auffrey is a CEO, advocate, and board member. Wealth of experience in all areas, Monique, and I'm looking forward to this great interview with you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
So we're going to just jump right in, Monique. One of the biggest questions, I always think it's really interesting to ask the question of our women of inspiration. When you were 12, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I wanted to be an actress. What else? And I tried, I had so much fun in theater. Actually found myself at university in a drama club and met some of my best friends there who continue to be my friends, my best friends to this day. It was a transformational experience for me. And although I never became a professional actress, I got to do lots of fun stuff on the stage, being in plays, being in some commercials and things like that. But more importantly, the training gave me the confidence to put myself forward and to use my voice. So I'm grateful to that 12-year-old girl's vision of herself, even though, of course, these things change. And I love to tell young girls today, dream big, have aspirations of what you want to be, but don't be afraid to change your mind or don't solidify anything at this point necessarily, because life is full of surprises and changes along the way.
Well, I think that's great advice, Monique, because, how many times have we pivoted in our lives where a door closes, another one opens up, and a new opportunity always presents itself. So let me ask you something. So CEO, advocate, and board member. I mean, when we think about some of the barriers that women face right now, it's like, how do you get on those boards? So how did you get onto those board positions, Monique? What was that career path for you?
Interestingly, I think a lot of board work predominantly is volunteer, unless you're on a corporate board. I've always been on community boards, which is as a volunteer. At a young age, I was involved in community, and the very first board I was invited to join, I was a young single mom, and my daughter was attending a daycare, and the daycare was a nonprofit organization. They asked me to join their board. I was honored and took that opportunity, and that became my first board experience. And it's interesting because I had that board experience, it helped to get me through the door for my first CEO job, because I already had board experience.
So very interesting. So the listeners that are listening, and I know that that's something that, as you look in, I did an interview yesterday with some young ladies, our National Ambassador Youths, and they're, 14, 12, and they're carving their path right now. They're very set on their goals. They know exactly what they want. But for the young girls that are listening and carving that path, or anybody looking at transition, take those opportunities to volunteer are so worthwhile, and especially how they pave the path for roles like a CEO job, because board experience is invaluable. So what other tips might you give to somebody looking to carve their path to get into the board, to get a seat at the table?
Well, I think that community volunteer opportunities exist all over the place. And so the question really is, how do you access your contacts and your passions and interests to find those opportunities and to take them and to take the lead on them as well? There are untapped areas, I think, in community that sometimes people don't think about. For example, community associations. are a great place to get started. As I mentioned earlier, my daughter's daycare, you might not think of those places as entry points into the boardroom, but they certainly are. And they teach you so much about collaboration, about governance, about collegiality, about all sorts of things that are necessary to continue paving the way for a future that includes potentially becoming a CEO. And in addition to that, I often tell my staff, if you are interested in positions of greater leadership or more responsibility, you really do have to think about how you can apply yourself in the community to bring that external view back into your practice within the organization. So to anybody out there listening who might be in a position where they're looking to grow their expertise or profession, do consider getting some experience outside of your workplace in a volunteer role, potentially getting on a board, and then you just have that extra it's not little, that extra thing to offer your organization that others might not necessarily be thinking about.
Great advice, Monique. And I want to touch on something, the word time. I think time is probably one of the largest barriers for women because there's so little of it. We're caretakers, we look after our families, perhaps our parents that are getting older, we volunteer, so how did you manage to do, taking on a board role without the experience as a single parent? And I'm assuming that you were a working parent because you had daycare. So how did you really balance that all? Do you remember how you did that? Is it just a memory now that you just like it's a faded memory? Or do you remember what kind of some of those secret sauces were that helped you get through those really busy days?
In one word, youth. I had more energy then than I do now. And again, this is to point our younger generation in this direction. When you're young and you have a bit more time and more energy, you can explore these opportunities. I think today I'm 50 and I'm grateful to have taken advantage of some of the time I had when I was younger and energy to apply it to my career, because at this stage, I'm reflecting on some of the achievements and I do wonder, how did I do that? But in all honesty, I think, and a very practical answer to your question is, when my daughter was young, I had more time to contribute to community and other areas of interest. And, if you're a single mom and you're co-parenting with another parent, sometimes that affords you more breadth of freedom in terms of how you manage your schedule. And for parents who are parenting together, that can also be of benefit because you have the other parent to rely on. So there's, some challenges always as a parent, whether you're single parent or co-parenting, or you have other areas of support in terms of childcare. But as your children get older, or, you become an empty nester, then opportunities come up again or change, etc. So all I can say is part of the secret sauce for me was really maybe not sitting still very often when I was younger, and really checking out any and every door that could possibly be opened. I don't think I was doing it because I had the end in mind. I certainly didn't start my board experience thinking that it was going to get me a CEO job at all. I think I was always surprised when people asked me to help. I would say, yeah, of course, if that person asked me to do something, particularly people I really respected. And that gets back to that relationship piece, right? And how women can lift each other up. And I was so fortunate to have so many women around me my entire life who were just guiding me and opening doors, opening my mind, providing me opportunities. And I'm going to give a shout out to my mom, because when I had my daughter, she was 3 months and I just went back to school to do my master's degree. And my mom said to me, "You're not going to go back and do your master's if you don't have good childcare." And my mom and I didn't live in the same city. And so she drove 3 hours every Monday morning to leave her home to come to my home to take care of my daughter for the week, slept on the couch, did that for a year, would go back home to her home on the weekends in order to help me achieve my education. And she said, I'm doing this for you because I know that this opportunity will allow you to be financially independent and you'll be able to mother your child independently, financially speaking. You won't need, I mean, it's always nice to have as many people helping as possible, but that's an example, right, of a door being open for me, a significant gift that I will always cherish. And that led me to meeting women in the academic arena, my professors, again, who opened doors for me, who asked me to sit on committees. Senator Dr. Wanda Thomas Bernard is one of my greatest mentors and a friend. And I remember her asking me in my first years of social work education if I would sit on a committee on racial and ethnic affairs. When someone like Wanda asks you to participate in a group, you're going to say yes, not because of what you might, both because of what you might be able to contribute, even if you don't think that will be very much, but what you will gain from the experience. You know, giving back is an interesting thing because it's so reciprocal. That's not even a word, but there's reciprocity in there.
Reciprocity is king.
It's reciprocity. You're giving back, but you're being given so much more. And so it's cumulative, right? It builds and builds and builds and builds. If you have the right mindset, a positive attitude, you look at opportunities, you bring humility and gratitude to your life, you're going to find that the sun is shining even on dark days. And I think that that's been, I've been very blessed in my life to have those.
Well, I think that's great advice. There are always, women that are in transition that we touch in our daily lives, and for sure that are listening and will be listening to this podcast. So I really love, and as a single mom myself, I really love to be surrounded by other women that are able to move past and continue to build their lives with purpose, but also and do something that they're proud of, and not, be stuck. I think it's really important for women to see others succeeding so that they can succeed themselves. And the advice of, gathering around your cheerleaders, your support hers, as we call them, but really important, that core team. And so outside of your mom, we talk about support hers. We have those male champions that I really think those male allies are part of the way that we're going to move that needle and drive change. So who are those support hers in your world?
Well, I'm going to go back to my family. I think the very first individual who promoted me was my dad. He always wanted to see me achieve as much as I could. And he was the person who championed my academic pursuits at the beginning. And then, of course, my mom gifted me with that year of service and care of my daughter. But my dad is a wonderful example of, he has 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. And I certainly was encouraged to pursue post-secondary. And I think my dad wanted me to go to law school. I didn't do that. Wish maybe I had, but I ended up marrying a lawyer, sadly, who has passed away, Wiley. But Wiley was my second biggest champion. And although, he was a very well-known and respected lawyer, he saw me as a star and made me feel like I could do anything I wanted. And so I think, we draw on our families if we're lucky. And if we look outside of our families, we might have people like my first board chair, Bill Bean, who at the time was CEO of the QE2 Foundation in Halifax. And he hired me on a chance. Again, it was my first time being a CEO. I was a single mom. I was 35 years old. but he saw a lot in me, and I remember him telling me, "You're a star," and made me believe like I could achieve anything I wanted. So I'm so grateful to the men who have supported me, and from a very other end of the spectrum example, I have a young nephew who recently said to me, as I was transitioning in different areas of my career, that he felt I should go into politics. And I took him up on that, and I've thrown my name in the race municipally. And I just thought, when a young boy looks at a woman in his life and sees that potential of leadership, I just thought, I need to show him that, yeah, this is a great example for you, Samuel, to be looking at the women in your life and to be promoting them already at a young age. He'll continue on that path for the rest of his life. So yeah, I thank you, Monica, for including the men who are supporting us in our work, because although we're highlighting and supporting women, because we need to be doing that, we need to identify our allies and the men in our lives and in our communities who are, great examples, again, of allyship and support.
Absolutely. And, I couldn't agree more with you. And I'm really happy that I didn't listen to the naysayers initially, because some of the naysayers tend to hold you back. And as you know, it's one of the barriers that we have to face as women, is going with what we truly believe is possible, and forging that road, even though the road is not paved. You've got to build it. So I think listening to the stories of women like yourself, and women of inspiration and leaders in our communities, and getting those stories out, is so important. So thank you so much for sharing, Monique. Now I want to ask you about, you were, an award recipient. We're right now in our awards season, and there's lots of women being nominated. So do you remember what it felt like when you received a nomination saying, "Congratulations, you've been nominated"? How did that feel? Do you remember that moment?
I do, because it came from a board member, someone I really admired and respected on my board at Discovery House, Jerry Greenall. And I was blown away, because I felt so appreciated and valued on so many levels. So I remember the nomination a bit like it was yesterday. And I just kept thinking, is this real? Like, what do I have to do to get accepted? And I was already accepted. It didn't mean I won yet, but still, I couldn't really put it all together. And the journey has been just such a pleasure. Like any journey, you have to put some effort into it. But wow, it was so worth it. And so many amazing friendships have come out of it. Our friendship and friendships with other award winners. And so it's just been magnificent.
And I think I want to touch base a little bit about that, who me, and stepping into the spotlight, because that is also something that I think that we can do better doing, is to own our voice, step into the spotlight, and allow that recognition to happen. So how easy was that for you?
Well, I always look at it from the lens of my daughter, right? Like, I want her to step into her voice. I want her to step into her power. I want her to see herself for all of the glory and worth and gift that she is to the world. So if I can't accept my voice, we are the example to our children and to other children. And if we're going, no, 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 not me, no, my achievements are insignificant. They're not insignificant. They're incredibly meaningful. So we have to lead by example. And so I stepped into it, and I was proud of myself, and she was proud of me. And she says to me, "I'm so proud of you," and that means so much to me, not because I'm looking for glory. It's because I can see that she values something that has been important to me that is becoming important to her. And on the other side of that, I want her to pursue her own path around values and what's important to her. And just like she supported me, I want to be able to support her. So, again, reciprocity, cycle of life. It's just been really incredible.
And so the high point here is lead by example, step into the spotlight so that you can pave the road for others. And I don't think we can talk about that enough, Monique, because it's so important to know your worth.
Yeah, exactly. How are our children going to know their worth if we're not claiming our own, right? So absolutely, step into the spotlight, take on that power, and lead by example.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. You're an advocate. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you're most passionate about, and what are they?
Well, I certainly have become known for sharing my personal story and journey of having been the victim of domestic violence. And so I tell people that leadership is not without taking risks. And I sort of commented once on a book I'd written, or on a piece I'd read, that says, feel the fear and do it anyway. And certainly I'm not suggesting that women who are struggling through domestic violence do anything that is going to jeopardize their safety. But what I'm saying is, for me, having been the victim of domestic violence, getting out of that situation, I have used my personal story to ensure that we break stereotypes about who the victims of domestic violence are, to let women know that there is an opportunity to get help and find a community of people who will support them. And so being an advocate, using my voice and using my personal story has come, at a certain amount of risk, for sure. But I have felt that that's been important. I was in a position of privilege as a CEO of Discovery House Family Violence Prevention Society. And I wanted the women I was working with to understand that I too had experienced what they were experiencing. And so that was very important to me. And I've been known to fight for those who are marginalized. It's hard to talk about sometimes from a place of privilege or power, but for some of us who recognize that we have an opportunity to use our voice, I think it's important to champion those areas, particularly if they're hidden or not often spoken about.
And I know from experience that that is just a piece of the puzzle of the abuse that can continue, and then it can go into the court system for one, and so there has to be a way that women can use their voice, because I think a lot of opportunities for women to use their voice, that risk is so high that they don't have the opportunity to, and the systems that are in place prevent that from happening, which is incredibly flawed.
Yes, and not everybody can. So for those of us who can, I think it becomes incumbent upon us to do that, if we're able and willing. And so I came to a place in my life where I was able. I had the support of my husband at the time, who was incredibly supportive of my ability to share the story of my previous relationship. And the Walrus did an article that highlighted my story along with others, that provided me an opportunity to comment about accountability and holding perpetrators accountable at the end of the day in order to see some systemic changes. That can be within the court system and other areas. So, if people aren't going to talk about it, nothing's going to change. So that's part of the reason why I chose to speak out.
Well, Monique, thank you for speaking out. It feels like, a raindrop in a great big ocean. Yeah. And I think that we need more rain.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So you keep working, keeping your voice, and congratulations on your, accepting as a city council hopeful. That's also a big responsibility, to use your voice to help serve others in our community. So congratulations on that. So you go 1,000 miles a minute, obviously, always lots on the go. I always love to ask women like yourself, what do you do to keep motivated? Like, how do you keep motivated and keep moving on?
Coffee, lots of coffee.
Coffee?
Coffee,
I thought
coffee.
you were going to say that great mug that you had, raising the bar, the Universal Women's Network mug.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what my secret sauce is other than just, feeling blessed and showing gratitude, drinking coffee in the morning. Yeah. So
Is there one thing though that you do every day besides drinking coffee that prepares you and your mind to go fearlessly out there and
honestly,
take that path?
I know a lot of people meditate. I know a lot of people do yoga. I know a lot of people like to take walks in nature. I know, people say all these things. I'm not one of those people. Like, I love all that. I like to do it, but there's, besides maybe just saying my prayers, like, thanking spirit for what I've been gifted. There's nothing, I just kind of go with the flow.
That is a very honest answer. I was
It's,
also going to say, I think you pick up a paintbrush or a
oh, I
hammer.
love, yes. Listen, home renos, decorating magazines. I love that stuff. And it does keep my spirit of creativity alive. It's an expensive habit. I just had my faucet changed this morning. It's beautiful. But, some things need to come to a stop. And that's one of them.
Well, I say continue on with that in other ways, but I think there's, when we look at some of those things that bring us so much joy and passion, it
Yeah.
can be in the projects that we do.
Yes.
You may not meditate, but let me tell you, when you're doing the painting, when you're
Yes,
doing
true.
your creative work, you're in a meditative
Absolutely.
state doing that.
Oh,
And it's
yes.
really important. It's so healthy.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, 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 yes.
So anyways, I've just seen a couple of your posts and they seem to be very creative and
Oh,
you're
yeah,
always on another project. So
true.
I just thought I think that's something that's almost meditative for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, I painted a ceiling once in a Gustav Klimt inspired pattern. So it was extremely meditative, a lot of fun, a lot of work. It took a long time to complete. It was a small ceiling, but nonetheless, I see your point.
They are the hardest. And I have done ceilings before and I thought, well, there's a space that we can actually do. Let's just paint it up. And it was a big project. It was
Oh,
almost
yeah.
like, why did I bother? Anyways, I want to get back to a couple things about yourself and your leadership. And, so if we were to pick 3 words, Monique, to describe you and your leadership, what would those words be?
Courage. Leadership takes so much courage. It is not a status quo endeavor. I say feel the fear and do it anyway. And that means you've got to constantly push yourself.
Yeah.
3 words to describe myself?
Yeah. 3 words. So courage is definitely a big word for you.
Compassion. Compassion. Always putting yourself in somebody else's shoes in a way. You might not be able to fully experience or know what another person is living through, but trying to put yourself in somebody else's shoes is very helpful for me. And I'm going to use the word competence. Heck yeah. We need to own our competence. We work hard to get to where we are. And I know myself to be a very competent leader. And so not everybody always likes what we have to do in leadership. We have to make tough decisions. We have many competing demands coming at us. You have to look at the whole piece sometimes rather than an individual piece. But experience and expertise and the education that we've brought to the table creates competence. So I will own that.
And what do you admire most about other female leaders?
The thing I admire the most about female leaders are the ones who are looking to mentor other women. And back to the beginning of our conversation, opening doors to other women. So, too often women in leadership or in the corporate environment sometimes are framed to be competitive or not as kind to one another. And, that certainly is not the way I choose to view myself or surround myself with, I think we all benefit when we support each other. And certainly in the workplace. Yeah, so I would say that I really admire women who are able to continue to lead the way.
Well, those are some lead by example wisdom words for our listeners and our viewers today, Monique. I would really like to thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your leadership and giving some. I really like the talk that we had in the very beginning of the podcast about how to get onto boards, because I think that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Look for the nonprofits available. Look for the smaller businesses that really do need the support and offer your expertise and learn from that. I think those are really good things to keep in mind, because you can't get those and then you work your way up, right? And you gain that experience and knowledge. Knowledge is king.
And I just wanted to add a piece to that because you reminded me. I think young people today have a lot of diverse experiences and presentations that organizations are looking for. And, whether it's nonprofit organizations, church groups, community groups, daycares, sports organizations, more and more diversity is needed. And so boards need to diversify. And so I think that young people absolutely have an opportunity to give of themselves because they have more time perhaps than others, to get to the table early and to start learning. And so again, I encourage young people to keep their eyes open, volunteer where they can, and that can lead to wonderful opportunities.
Well, I thank you for that advice. It has been wonderful to speak with you, and it would not be a Woman of Inspiration podcast without asking you, Monique, what your definition of a woman of inspiration is.
I should have expected this question. Bold, fire, kindness. That's my definition.
And someone that is like your mother. It sounds like she is an incredible inspiration. That is usually something I ask, who inspires you? So maybe I'll say, is there any, your mom obviously is a woman of inspiration to you, but is there any other woman that inspires you?
Kamala Harris certainly inspired me, amongst others. I'm just going to throw a few names out there. I've mentioned Senator Dr. Wanda Thomas Bernard. She's a huge inspiration to me, always has been. A woman board member of mine when I first started at Discovery House, Barb Potter, is an incredible inspiration. Josie Nepiak, who is the executive director of Awaton here in Calgary, huge inspiration. And again, these are women who are not afraid in different ways. Their leadership styles are very different. And I think, I probably could learn a bit more from Barb's style of calm, steady leadership, which for me, going a mile, so fast, could probably learn from that. So.
Very honest. And I think that, the stat is, Monique, that 67% of women learn their leadership from other women. I actually think it's more like 98%. It's much, much higher, because we do learn and glean knowledge from the women who we, respect and who we see that we would love to emulate some of their leadership skills. So that's bang on, right? Keep learning, keep growing. Monique, it has been a pleasure to speak with you. If the listeners and viewers want to get hold of you, how can they do that?
They can find me on Twitter at Monique Auffrey. That's my Twitter handle. Same with LinkedIn. I'm not on Instagram, but I hope that people will join me on Twitter and LinkedIn.
And good luck with your campaign. And I hope that you enjoy the journey. That's one of the things that, I think is important as, a woman is, we have some great big goals and dreams. And sometimes we work so hard down that road, but we forget to enjoy the journey. So I wish you good luck, and I hope you enjoy the journey.
Thank you, Monica.
Thanks, Monique. Have a great day, and thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed our podcast today, I would invite you to share it with, let's say, the world. Just share it with your network. We'd love to make sure that the voices of our women of inspiration are shared with somebody that needs to listen and hear the advice, the wisdom and words from the leaders that we're interviewing. So thanks everyone, and I look forward to our next podcast on the Women of Inspiration podcast.
Bye.